When the neophyte had been thus invested, the robes and crown were taken from him, and he was again clad in the original white robe which had been given to him in the temple of the Sphinx. The priests then led him to a hidden door which opened with a secret lever and bade the neophyte proceed upon his journey, and closing the door as swiftly as it had been opened, left him alone. The neophyte now became aware of the fact that he had passed the first test and had issued from the halls of matter and darkness into the halls of light and understanding. For here he was without any material light, and yet he was able to see more clearly than he had ever done before. Having made these observations, the new son of Osiris proceeded along the mysteriously lit passage until he came to a small chamber, at which entrance stood a priest similarly clad to that one who had conducted the ritual in the circular temple, when he had been invested with the robes and crown of Osiris. Then was the neophyte led by the priest into the small chamber to which he had come, and the door was silently and mysteriously opened, and the priest and the new son of Osiris entered. The door again closed, and it appeared to the neophyte as if this act of closing the door was accomplished as the outcome of some force directed upon it by the priest himself. The seeker after the mysteries now proceeded to cast questioning glances around him, and he would perceive a small circular table of alabaster standing upon 4 legs. On this table stood an alabaster basin, at the side of which was a jug made of a like substance. Having allowed the neophyte to observe all these details, the priest would beckon him and would explain that he was now in the temple of the lotus, and he would point to the pillars which were in the form of lotus buds. He would also point to the jug, which was in the shape of a large opening lotus, whereas the basin represented a fully open lotus. And this was to symbolize that the sacred water of knowledge must be poured out of the vessel of the opening lotus, which symbolized dawning knowledge, into the vessel of the fully open lotus, which symbolized the open door to complete knowledge. The sacred water represented the cosmos, for the neophyte was invited to gaze upon its crystal surface after it had been poured into the vessel of the open lotus. If he could understand and translate the pictures which he saw mirrored upon its surface, it meant that the door to the mysteries was permanently open to him, and that he could pass through its portals to further knowledge. If, however, its surface remained clear and unresponsive, then the water was again transferred back to the vessel of the opening lotus, and the neophyte was told that he must further seek to overcome the hindrances of the mortal earth to which he had been born. This was very seldom the case, as the neophyte would surely fail long before he had come to the sacred temple of the lotus. Having passed through this test, the initiation in the halls of ordeal started. The door of the lotus temple was opened by the priest, and the neophyte was bidden to proceed on his quest for further knowledge. The door then closed behind him, and he was forced to proceed along the passage in which he now found himself. His actual destination, although he was not yet aware of it, was the first chamber of ordeal, which is situated below the base of the 3rd pyramid. When he had proceeded some distance, he encountered a priest who welcomed him into the antechamber, which stood between them and the first chamber of ordeal. In this antechamber, a ritual of ordeal was performed, and the protection of Osiris and the Ptah was invoked so that the neophyte could overcome the powers of Sataniku against which he now had to fight. These things having been performed, the priest of ordeal opened the door of the antechamber and allowed him to enter the chamber. He was left completely alone, or so it seemed, but he would suddenly become aware of other presences with him. Then thoughts and ideas would batter themselves against his brain, so that if he allowed his mind to dominate him, he would be entirely overcome by that which was imposing its will upon his. He would be made to doubt the sanity of his own brain, and would have it suggested that if he cared to follow the promptings which he heard, He would again be afforded access to the light of day, which he would not see again if he rejected the help offered. Until you have suffered the ordeal by suggestion, you can have no conception how it can upset and undermine the spiritual mind, for its object is to attack the fundamentals of the spirit mind and point out the logic of the mortal physical brain. When the neophyte had come successfully through this test, having been kept a period of 7 hours, the priest again came to him and questioned him as to those things which had befallen him during the priest's absence. The answers of the neophyte were sufficient to show the priest whether or not the test had been passed, and the candidate had overcome the forces and emotions which had pitted themselves against him.